Native American civil rights are the civil rights of Native Americans in the United States. Native Americans are citizens of their respective native nations as well as the United States, and those nations are characterized under United States law as domestic dependent nations, a special relationship that creates a tension between rights retained via tribal sovereignty and rights that individual natives have as U.S. citizens. This status creates tension today, but was far more extreme before Native people were uniformly granted U.S. citizenship in 1924. Assorted laws and policies of the United States government, some tracing to the pre-revolutionary colonial period, denied basic human rights, particularly in the areas of cultural expression and travel to indigenous people. Although the many tribes and peoples indigenous to the United States have varying civil rights priorities, there are some rights that nearly all Native Americans are actively pursuing. These include the protection of voting rights and resistance to the cultural assimilation of Native Americans. Many tribes that live on Indian reservations are currently facing the destruction of surrounding environments and water sources, depressed economies, violence against women, and drug and alcohol addiction crises. To pre-contact with Europeans before colonization, many natives lived in North and South America. Native American peoples' cultures, origins, religions, and languages are vastly diverse. The story of these tribes that survived genocide of Native Americans have mostly been passed through oral stories traditions. Religious practices among natives, pre-colonialism ranged from individual prayers, rituals, and offerings to large intertribal ceremonies. Pre-contact religion was often closely tied to the land and the environment. These concerns include the omnipresent, invisible universal force, and the three life crises of birth, puberty, and death, spiritual beings, revelations, human intercessors into the spirit world, and ceremonies that renew communities. 1585-1786. Initial meetings in 1585, an American Indian tribe on the eastern coast of North America made contact with English explorer Richard Grenville, who set up a settlement called Roanoke Colony. The native people proved hospitable and receptive to Grenville. However, when a small silver cup was stolen from him, Grenville and his men sacked and burned down an entire village in revenge. By 1586, the English settlement had been abandoned. Grenville returned to England with a Native American captive called Raleigh. 5 in 1607, decades after the interaction between the tribesfolk and Grenville, Captain John Smith established the colony of Jamestown in the middle of the Powhatan Confederacy in what is now Virginia. Powhatan, the leader of his tribe, refrained from attacking the colonists as they established their settlement. Despite this, conflicts quickly broke out between the colonists and the Powhatan. Chief Powhatan wrote in a letter to John Smith, "I have seen 2 generations of my people die. I know the difference between peace and war better than any man in my country. Why will you take by force what you may have quietly by love? Why will you destroy us who supply you with food? What can you get by war? We can hide our provisions and run into the woods. Then you will starve for wronging your friends. Why are you jealous of us? We are unarmed, and willing to give you what you ask, if you come in a friendly manner, and not so simple as not to know that is it much better to eat good meat, sleep comfortably, live quietly with my wives and children, laugh and be merry with the English, and trade for their copper and hatchets, than to run away from them and to lie cold in the wood, feed on acorns, roots, and such trash, and be so hunted that I can neither eat nor sleep. Take away your guns and swords, the cause of all our jealousy, or you may all die in the same manner." In the winter of 1609 through 1610, the residents of Jamestown had little food or effective shelter as they experienced the starving time. In December 1609, John Radcliffe, who succeeded Smith as president of the colony, and around 50 colonists went to meet with a group of Powhatan Indians to bargain for food. However, they were ambushed and only 16 survived. Radcliffe was captured and later tortured to death. This marked the beginning of First Anglo-Powhatan War. 67 The Powhatan tribe integrated and cared for some of the colonists who deserted Jamestown to live with them, as they were much more prepared for the harsh winter. 4 In the summer of 1610, when the governor of Virginia Colony, Lord de la Warr, requested that Powhatan return the runaways, the Powhatan chief showed no intention to bring them back. In response, the colonists raided and sacked the Pasquota capital, which was a tributary tribe to the Powhatan, killing at least 15 natives, and kidnapping the wife of the village chief and their children. 48 The war lasted until 1614, however. Conflict resumed in 1622, when the Powhatan massacred Jamestown in March 1622, killing around a third of the inhabitants. 347 colonists. 9 This caused Second Anglo-Powhatan War that would last until 1632. Christianization and assimilation. Many European missionaries believed that it was their sacred duty and calling from God to convert Native Americans to Christianity. 1011 Spaniards practiced Christianization in the New World using Pope Alexander V's papal bull, Inter Caetera. This allowed rulers to bring under their sway non-Christian countries and islands discovered by Columbus, along with their residents and inhabitants, and to bring them to the Catholic faith. Citation needed. The missionaries developed praying towns to create orderly Christian communities filled with model converts who were living and working under the watchful eye of a priest or pastor. 12 Within these communities, converts to the Christian faith would be placed in a separate area from the remainder of the tribe in order to prevent regression back to their native beliefs. Missionaries such as John Eliot, a Puritan, and Isaac McCoy, a Baptist, led the way in the spread of their beliefs within these types of towns and among the natives. These towns led the way to the future separation of the natives from the remainder of society in Native American reservations. 1787-1899. Creating the Constitution. See the Indian Appropriations Acts. The 1851 Indian Appropriations Act allocated funds to move Western tribes onto Indian reservations where they would be protected and enclosed by the United States government. According to the federal government at that time, reservations were to be created in order to protect the Indians from increasing numbers of white Americans moving to the West. 1945 Criticizing colonialism. Native peoples have been active in educating non-natives on the cultures, histories, and experiences of their tribes since the beginning of colonization. Chief Plenty Coups of the Crow Nation in Montana and Alfred Kayana of the Meskwaki settlement in Iowa spoke to historians, anthropologists, and journalists through translators to criticize the idea of American progress and to express pride and faith in the identities of their own cultures. 14 Charles Eastman, a Duakanton and Wapton Sioux physician, published books and articles in English for American people to show that it is not savage that Native people celebrate what Mourning Dove called the ancient way. In 1902, Gertrude Bonin told the Atlantic Monthly that the traditions of her tribe, the Yankton Dakota Sioux, were not only equal to European Americans, but that their values were superior. 14 Involvement with United States politics. In 1903, Charles Eastman, a Santee Dakotan and Native representative, was requested by Theodore Roosevelt to help Sioux people choose English names in order to protect their lands from being taken. Lands registered with the birth and natural names of natives were often lost due to confusion the United States government employees had with filling paperwork. 15 The United States government has a strong history. Thomas Bishop, a Snohomish man, recorded his elders' memories of U.S. promises and compared them to the actual texts and treaties. He published a piece based on these discrepancies in 1915 titled An Appeal to the Government to Fulfill Sacred Promises Made 61 Years Ago. Following this, he and other citizens of Pacific Northwest tribes organized all the Tulalip Agency reservation communities into the Northwestern Federation of American Indians with the goal of redeeming promises made in treaties. 14 Post-World War II. 1946-1959 Many Native Americans aided the United States in World War II. Veterans came back from serving, only to find that the U.S. government and American people would not recognize their contributions to the war effort. This encouraged natives to begin moving towards activism that was more focused on tribal sovereignty and self-determination. 14 advocacy groups, such as the National Congress of American Indians, NCAI, which was founded in 1944, began representing tribal interests to the public and to Congress. The NCAI's founding members came from a wide variety of professionals including veterans, anthropologists, lawyers, elected state and federal officials, and a professional baseball player, George Eastman, and half of them had previously served on Indian Rights Association chartered tribal councils. At least 4 of them were also members of the Society of American Indians. 14 Civil Rights Movement era. 1960-1968. See also. Red Power Movement. In 1961, the National Indian Youth Council formed in pursuit of a greater Indian America. The organization members were young and had grown out of a summer program that brought students from all around the U.S. to Boulder, Colorado, and introduced to the Southwest Regional Indian Youth Council so that they could learn about the native state of affairs. The organization's members, people such as Clyde Warrior, Melvin Tom, Vine Deloria Jr., and Hank Adams, rejected beliefs that natives were unable to help themselves or that they needed to adopt American society as their own. They were seen as an upset to norms in the Native community, as they were much younger than other recognized leaders of Native civil rights movements. They emphasized direct protest action and pursued federal recognition of several then unrecognized Native nations. They also organized the first conference where unrecognized Native community members, tribal chiefs, and U.S. chairpersons shared a public stage. 14 Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968. With the law of the Indian Civil Rights Act, ICRA, at the time, also called the Indian Bill of Rights, the indigenous people were guaranteed many civil rights they had been fighting for. 16 The ICRA supports the following: 17 Right to free speech, press, and assembly, protection from unreasonable invasion of homes, right of criminal defendant to a speedy trial, to be advised of the charges, and to confront any adverse witnesses, right to hire an attorney in a criminal case, protection against self-incrimination, protection against cruel and unusual punishment, excessive bail, incarceration of more than 1 year and/or a fine in excess of $5,000 for any one offense, protection from double jeopardy or ex post facto laws, right to a jury trial for offenses punishable by imprisonment, equal law protection, due process. Other civil rights such as sovereignty, hunting and fishing, and voting are still issues facing Native people today. Contemporary movements. 1969 present. There has been increased dialogue around the controversy of using Native American symbols such as for school or team mascots. Concerns are that the use of the symbols distort Native American history and culture and often stereotype in offensive ways. 18 In 2020, the Washington Redskins retired their name and logo, which depicted a side profile of a Native American man, following public outcry that the team's branding was offensive to Native Americans. 19 In a statement,